Morning you guys, it's Karen and I'm here to talk about the options that are open to you if you would like to become a groomer. So when I was doing my grooming, and ever since, whenever I talk about grooming, I get private messages, emails asking what course I did and how you could either learn to groom your dog at home or learn to potentially become a dog groomer. I have extra motivation to do this video today because I have actually created my own course on dog grooming, so I'll tell you about that as one of the options, but I'm going to talk about everything that you would need to do depending on the route you want to take. The first thing to tell you is that the dog grooming business in the UK is currently unlicensed and unregulated. However, that is changing and there is a big push to change that. There are a lot of voluntary schemes that grooming salons actually join, and that gives them a bit more, I think people are more comfortable with that, and it may be that any one of these schemes becomes a requirement in the future. There's three different routes to becoming a groomer or to learn dog grooming. Number one is to do an actual course, so not an online course but attend a course, and there's only two recognised. One is City and Guilds and the other is a Pet Industry Federation diploma. The City and Guilds is really the gold standard, if you like, and so attend that course, and with that course you actually get to groom dogs. You attend a college or university and you gain your experience, and then you do exams, and then you are prepared in all ways to be a dog groomer. The second option is to become a groomer's assistant, and before I did my own grooming course and became a groomer, I actually went for an interview at Pets at Home for a dog grooming assistant. It turned out I couldn't actually manage the hours and whatnot, but that is, I would say, one of the best ways to enter the industry, to gain experience. And if you go to the right place, such as Pets at Home, they will actually support you in doing your City and Guilds training. Each salon will have different practices on what they give you in terms of training, but for example with the Pets at Home, I believe you can do the training whereby you get half a day a week, and they may have even contributed financially towards it. But the great thing about working as a groomer's assistant is that you would be learning on the job as well as learning educationally, so you'd be getting all the knowledge and you could then apply it to the dogs that you were helping with on a daily basis. The downside to that, of course, is that it doesn't pay very well and it's long hours and it's a full-time job, so it may not be something you can afford to do, it may not be something you're able to do, but that's option two. Option three is self-learning, which is the route that I took. So I did an online course over about 6 months, and during that time I was practicing on my own dog and some friends' dogs, and then once I was qualified and felt I had enough experience, I started offering free grooms. And I'll talk about that option later. What I'm going to do is go through each of these options and tell you the prices and the length of time it takes and what the advantages and disadvantages are of each. So let's look at option one, which is the City and Guilds training. There is that Pet Industry Federation diploma, but that's really for people that have already had the experience and are a groomer and can sit exams and practicals and show that they have the knowledge, and it's not really all-encompassing. City and Guilds is really the only recognised qualification. There are two different courses that you can go through to begin with City and Guilds. There may even be more than that. I think there are add-ons that you can do depending on the centre that you go to. But basically there is a dog groomer's assistant City and Guilds course, which is the one that if you were working as a dog groomer's assistant, that's the course they would put you through, the City and Guilds dog grooming assistant qualification. And then there is a level 2, I can't remember the name of it, but that's what you would do after doing the dog grooming assistant. At the dog grooming assistant level, you don't do any styling at all. You don't learn any styling. The grooming assistant course is 20 to 25 days, depending on where you go, and costs about £1,300, so £1,300 for 20 to 25 days where you go to a classroom situation. And the level 2 course is another 26 days, plus it says 6 days working at home, so there's things that you'll need to do, homework I guess. So the total course, if this is the way you want to go, if you want to do the City and Guilds course and then set up your own professional salon, for example, you are looking at spending 50 days approximately and between £4,000 and £5,000, so a couple of months, and £4,000 and £5,000. So it's hugely expensive. But if you are intending on opening an actual professional salon, this really is what you need to do, and I would highly recommend going down this route. This is also the one I would recommend if you would like to get a job as, say, head of salon or managing your own salon, and you don't actually want to open up your own business to start with. I would still recommend this course, but obviously it's hugely expensive. You know, £5,000 is a lot of money to spend, but it's the only way that you get such an intense training course where you get experience, hands-on experience, and you get every single bit of information you will ever need. If you are already working, then obviously you'll need your employer's support to take a couple of months off to do this. You're investing £5,000. So I would say to really be sure that this is what you want to do. So option 2 is working as a dog groomer's assistant. And this really is just about keeping an eye on the job market. And obviously it depends whether or not you would intend to leave your current job and go to work as a full-time groomer, or whether you perhaps want to do something in evenings and weekends. I think that they do look for evening and weekend staff at places like Pets at Home. And if you could afford to or were willing to, I would say the quickest way to get a job would be to do it voluntary. So if you could do, say, a Saturday or a Saturday morning or every other Saturday or something like that, if you write to all of the smaller groomers in the area that you live and offer that service, I'm pretty sure that they would grab that opportunity, especially if you were also doing some kind of training already, even if it was a small online course. As a dog grooming assistant, you won't actually be styling the dogs, but you will be you know, almost being like that nurse assistant, passing tools to them. And so you will be able to learn about the styling, and you'll be doing mostly the bathing and preparing them for the groom. So you may be doing nail clipping, getting them dry, and just generally looking after the dogs. So I think you can still learn a lot working as a dog groomer's assistant. The third option is self-learning, and this is the route that I took. So I'll tell you exactly how I did it. But I would say you could combine self-learning with working, especially if you're only working part-time for a groomer. I would say try to combine that with an online course, because if you're working just on a part-time or weekend basis for a smaller groomer, they are unlikely to give you any support for training that you might do. So if you can combine the two, you've got the practical experience at the groomers, and you then are also learning via a course. My journey to becoming a groomer was sort of accidental, in that Watson, my dog, is an Australian Labradoodle, and I was disappointed every time we got him back from the groomers because they didn't seem to be following my instructions, and he had sort of odd things, you know, like he'd have a huge bushy tail when I'd asked for a short tail. Because of his allergies, he needs quite short fur, and it just wasn't working out for me. And oftentimes he'd come home and I would try to correct the things that I felt they had done that were not as per my request. So for example, he would come home with big earmuff ears and they hadn't really cut them or layered them or styled them whatsoever. So I would try to do them, and myself and my husband would put him on the coffee table. I'd be looking at YouTube videos and trying to figure out how to get these ears to look okay, and they just didn't at the beginning. So I decided that I would do an online dog grooming course so that I could groom Watson. And I started the course and quickly realised that although I would gain a lot of knowledge from the course, it wasn't going to give me any practical experience. So combining the course with YouTube videos and practicing on Watson, I started to get a little bit of confidence. But it was very tricky because there was a lot of questions I had along the way and no one to ask. So I didn't know why things were, you know, I couldn't get the face to look a particular way, and I didn't know why, and I couldn't ask anybody, and there was no sort of resource for me to say, well, why is this not working for me, and how do I do this, you know. So I completed the course, and during that time I did do some neighbours' dogs, some friends' dogs. I thought, you know, to try different styles of dogs, different smaller dogs with a different coloured coat, etc., would maybe give me a broader range of experience. And having done the health and safety part and the first aid, I felt comfortable, and I was cautious enough that I wasn't going to hurt the dogs. But what I always said to people was, because this is free and I am not yet qualified, please be aware that you could get a complete mess coming back. You know, I'm not yet a professional groomer, I am practicing. So I needed to make people very, very aware that they were getting a free service, but it was at a risk of a potentially unflattering haircut for their dog. I only did Labradoodles in most of my grooming business. I did Labradoodles. I did a Schnauzer and a Westie and all sorts of doodle crosses. So a Jackapoo, a Schnoodle, all that kind of thing, a Spaniel, but I haven't done every single type of dog. I was sticking to one kind of breed. And so luckily for me, I kind of had a knack for styling a doodle in a way that doodle owners liked, because the problem had been that if you are a professional groomer, you use a show standard template, if you like, to style dogs. So you have a look what a show schnauzer should look like, or a show poodle should look like, but there is no show standard for a Labradoodle. Therefore they would just do the best that they could, or most of them would do a Labradoodle like a poodle, and that's why we ended up with dogs that we didn't, with a style that we didn't want. So after I had done friends and neighbours, etc., I then put an advert on the Facebook group that I am part of, saying exactly what I said there. I'm in the middle of doing a dog grooming qualification. I would really love to get some more experience. I'm happy to do a free groom for anybody that would be willing to let me practice on their dog. I had done a canine first aid course by that point, and I had done the health and safety chapter. So I said, I'm confident that I can keep them safe and I certainly won't hurt them, but you may end up again with an unflattering haircut. And I got so many clients that way, so many clients that I could practice on. Now, luckily for me, I seem to have a knack to do these doodles, like I said, in a particular style. And that meant that then I started to think, well, this is something I can do, and I can do as a business. So I set up as a business, and I already then had all of those repeat clients. My goal was really to make the process as enjoyable as possible for the dogs, because the other thing I was unhappy with Watson was I felt that it wasn't a nice experience for him. He was very nervous about going and didn't enjoy it whatsoever, and I wanted to make it into a nice experience for the dogs. So I would put liver paste on the grooming table, and they'd have lots of little breaks, and we'd play ball in the garden. They'd get treats throughout. I would have calming music on, you know, things like that. So I think that appealed to people, and that and a good cut meant that I had this repeat business. What then happened is, if I was asked to do another breed that I had not yet experienced, I would say, I can do it, but I've never done this. So the first Schnauzer, I've never done Schnauzers before. I can absolutely do a groom for you. It will be free of charge because it is free training for me, but you need to be aware that this would be my first one. And then I would just make sure that I looked up. I had a big book called Notes from the Grooming Table, which if you can at all get a copy of is just fantastic, but it is about £200 for the book. But it will give you every single breed and exactly how they should be cut. So I would look at that, get the right blades, watch a lot of YouTube videos, and then make sure I asked the client exactly how they wanted the dog cut. So within a couple of months, I was completely fully booked, and I had turned my home into a grooming business. We had an extra room that my husband was using as a study. We changed that into a groom room. I bought a bath, put it in there, had it installed, a grooming bath, so that I wasn't bending over my own bath and didn't need to use the bathroom. And yeah, it was all really, really good. Unfortunately, it was very heavy duty on my joints, and it wasn't something I could continue. It was just too painful for me, sadly. I was very sad to not continue on with the business because it was very successful. Like I said, I was fully booked and I loved spending time with the dogs, but it just wasn't to be. So I moved on to teaching. So that's my story on how I self-taught. So we're talking about self-teaching here. So I had a look online at all the courses available to me when I thought about doing an online course, and it was very difficult to know which ones were good and which ones weren't, but they were all around about the same price. So they were all about £300 or £400, and there didn't seem to be much difference between them. My friend had actually started one of the courses and said that it seemed to be okay at the beginning, and so I did that course. But I have to say, I couldn't personally recommend this course to you because I felt that there was a lot wrong with it. I learned a lot from it, of course, but there was also things in it that I felt were it's just not a course I would recommend. And remember that with online courses, you are not going to get any practical experience from that. You are just going to be learning the basics. So I don't unfortunately have any online courses that I can recommend, because the one I did I don't recommend, other than the course that I've created. And I really did want to give you another option. It's not because I want you to go for my course. because my course may not be suitable for you if you want to become a professional. I'll talk about my course in a moment. But online, I just haven't seen anything that I thought that looks like an amazing course. So I'd really recommend, if at all possible, doing the option 1 or option 2 or a combination. So working for a groomer part-time if you're going to do an online course, or doing the City and Guilds if you can at all afford it and if you're able to, you know, put the time into it. So my course that I have just created is called Learn to Groom Your Dog from Home. But I did put a module in there about business considerations. So, you know, what if you were wanting to make a grooming business from home, what would be your considerations? And I think if you want to open your own salon, then my course would give you the basics about dog grooming and things you need to consider, but there's nothing in it about working in your own salon, managing a salon. There's nothing salon related at all. It's all about grooming your own dog at home. And if you wanted to start a grooming business from home, as I did, then I think it would be pretty useful, because I talk about the things you would need to consider. If you would just like to do a course because you want to groom your own dog, again, I would recommend the course that I've done on Learn to Groom Your Dog at Home. So my course is basically lecture style, so talking head as I am now for a lot of it, but I've also then included all videos on practical styling. So there is face, hygiene area, legs, body, tail, ear hair removal, nail clipping, you know, everything that's involved in grooming. There is a practical demonstration, and then there is the modules on health and safety. There's a module on how to choose clippers and how to choose scissors, and things like that I didn't find were included in my course. There was nothing on how exactly to use a clipper, how did you choose the different blades, how did you choose scissors, which different types of scissors were there. This wasn't included in enough depth for me to know what to do really on my course. So I'll link my course for you. I can't link the City and Guilds course because it depends where you are. So if you want to do the City and Guilds training, I would just Google City and Guilds and your city, and it will bring up the people that do the City and Guilds training in your area. So City and Guilds dog training and London, and then it will tell you where you can get your training done locally. So what are the pros and cons of being a dog groomer? Well, the pros to me, and why I started off doing it, were that I get to spend time with dogs. First of all, I've wanted to work with dogs for a long time, and the idea that I could spend my days with dogs and this would earn me a living was amazing. And so you get to spend time with dogs, and that's wonderful. Money wise, you can earn a salary that you can survive on, but it isn't going to be a huge earner. I think people think that it's very expensive, and it is. I was paying £40–50 to have Watson groomed, and that would seem like an awful lot of money. I was charging, at the beginning I charged 30, and then it went up to 40 once I became a bit more experienced, and that £40 didn't cover very much, because it would take me about 3 to 4 hours to do the groom. So £10 an hour, and that's before buying the things like the shampoo, the conditioner. You need to renew your blades, you need to buy blade oil, you need treats. You know, there's a lot of expense involved in it, so it's not something that's going to earn you a huge amount of money, but it will earn you a salary. Another pro is you have the opportunity to affect a dog's life in a positive way. So you can make that experience for them that is sometimes, or most of the time, very difficult for them and very nerve-wracking. You can make a difference and make it into a situation that they enjoy. Or maybe not all of them will enjoy it. You can do your best to make them feel calm and take away their fear. And of course, working for yourself is a pro in itself for a lot of people. You can set your own hours, etc., etc. So the cons are, working for yourself means that you'll need to do your taxes, and you won't get paid for being on holiday. When you're sick or when you're on holiday, there will be no pay. And in fact, I would say that you wouldn't call in sick, if you like, as quickly as you would if you were working in a traditional job, because you know that you're going to be personally letting people down and letting dogs down. A big disadvantage, unfortunately, is the clients. I had so many situations with clients that surprised and shocked me that I can't tell you. And obviously, to be professional, I'm not going to talk about the things that really did shock me. But what I can tell you is that most of my clients were late. most of them were late to drop off, most of them were late to pick up. And when I spoke to my hairdresser about that at the time, she said that that was the usual way in hairdressing, that most people, or a lot of people, are late for appointments. And not late because something happened, late because they picked up a coffee or, you know, something that could have been avoided and they could have been on time. So it's something I think you need to expect. If that's going to be something that will bother you, then you need to figure out a way that you're going to manage that. Because for me, I'm very time oriented, and especially if I had a groom in the morning and a groom in the afternoon, it meant that then the one in the afternoon was going to be late, you know, I'm going to be pushing them late, and then, you know, it's a long day and I had appointments and things that I needed to work around. You just need to accept the fact that people are going to be late. But not only lateness, people may not look after their dogs the way that you would. They might tell you things about the way they discipline their dogs that you don't agree with, but it's not your place, unfortunately, to say anything. I think the biggest thing though is matting, and that's a big thing in the dog industry. I see on forums all the time dog owners saying, I'm being told that my dog needs to be shaved and I just don't understand why I like the fur longer. But with dogs that don't shed or that are low shedding, such as Labradoodles, the coats get matted and not many people look after the coats. Again, I would say out of the, say 100 dogs that I groomed, there was probably 10 that had a coat that was regularly brushed and free of tangles and mats. And so you will have to have a certain amount of firmness to explain to your clients the way that they need to care for their dog if they want a particular type of coat. And you'll also need to be firm enough to say, it's unfair to put this dog through hours of removing mats, we need to shave the dog. So there's situations like that. I think when you start your own business, I certainly wanted to be a people pleaser. I wanted to please everybody because they were all a potential client, but actually there were a couple of situations where the dog was so matted, I should have said, I need to shave this dog, rather than spending hours combing out the mats. That's a big disadvantage to people. Another disadvantage is the stress that it puts on your joints. You can actually get repetitive strain injury from being a groomer, and I can totally see why now, because when you are, for example, scissoring legs, which is very labour intensive, even if you have a stool and you're moving around, you're often bent like this in different ways, and of course you're constantly using your hands for hours in the same repetitive motion. So there is a risk to your joints in doing this job. It is a very, very physical job. After doing, you know, a 3 to 4 hour groom, I would be sweating and I'd feel like I'd done an aerobic workout. So I would say if you have any kind of joint problems, you really need to think about it seriously, and it's probably best if you are somebody with healthy joints before you embark on a career as a groomer. That's really all the disadvantages. So obviously it just depends for you if the advantages outweigh the disadvantages. And for me, if it weren't for the joint pain that I have because of a condition I have, then I would have continued doing it despite the issues. And I was a little bit heartbroken with some of the dogs that were very, very matted, and you know, realizing that not everybody was able to brush their dogs daily, etc. But I would have, despite all of that, continued on doing grooming because I absolutely adored spending time with the dogs. There's all sorts of challenges. One disadvantage I haven't mentioned is that obviously you are going to get dogs that are aggressive, that are anxious, and that may try and bite you. This is just one of the challenges that is there for you, but I suppose I didn't think of that as a huge disadvantage because you can use a muzzle and then hopefully you can train them to not be scared, because it's normally, if they're aggressive, it's because they're scared. I think that's everything to tell you, other than what I would recommend you do, regardless of whether you want to groom your own dog, friends' dogs, start from home or go to a professional salon, do a canine first aid course. I think that the canine first aid course I did was absolutely fantastic, and that would be great even if you just have a dog. It's really good knowledge to have, but that's something that will give you confidence if you're going to have dogs in your company and be responsible for them. And the final thing to mention is to have a think about insurance. If you are doing other people's dogs and they're coming into your home and you're responsible for them, you should really have insurance. insurance, and the insurance I went with was Cliverton. It's about £400 for a year to have public liability insurance as a groomer with Cliverton. So that's everything. Thank you so much for watching. Please feel free to leave any comments in the comments section, and I will do my best to answer any questions you have. Maybe I'll see you on the grooming course, and I will speak to you again soon.